Welcome to Becoming Limitless, a show about wellness, biohacking, well-being, healthy aging, and anything in between. There's also another aspect to this show about focusing on local entrepreneurs, people that are making a difference in this space that get very little attention sometimes. And today, I want to start by saying that there are people sometimes that you meet that you get particularly overwhelmed about the kindness, the generosity that they offer, and the impact that they have on a particular space. And today I'm thrilled to have Hadil Al Khatib with me, who has done exactly that. Hadil is incredible in every way, and ever since I've met her maybe a couple of years ago, I repeatedly was convinced over and over again of her generosity, of her contribution to the community, to other women, to business people, to the wellness space, and so on, guiding people to heal through the center of their being, which is their gut. She's a founder of Broth Lab, the Roost, and Catcha Matcha, and she is continuously doing everything possible to make sure that the message is spread as far as the importance of wellness and well-being. Welcome.
Thank you for the very kind introduction.
It doesn't do justice.
Thank you.
You are incredible with everything that you do, and I have told you this repeatedly, but I wanted to say it also to the world just to make sure that you also hear it.
Back at you.
So I want to just start a little bit about your background. I know that you come from a very corporate background, and there was a good reason why you made the shift. Besides obviously becoming an awesome mother and all of that, but there is a good reason that you made the shift from what you were doing to now. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. So, funny enough, I have a master's degree in human resource management from the University of Manchester. All I knew back then that this is where I'm going to be progressing in my career. This is my calling in life, and I was pretty good at it. I was heading the human resource management and division in the energy sector of Abu Dhabi, the capital. And at a very young age, I was progressing really well. Like I said, I used to love what I used to do. And this was what I assumed was my calling. I accelerated on the career ladder. I was probably the only young woman in a boardroom full of, gray-haired men at the time. And I felt, wow, I'm going to go far where I am right now. But I'm sure to so many who are listening, health is never really the priority then. And sometimes ambitious blinds you. And I got really sick. I got sick to an extent where I had to do something. Not only change my career, look after myself, but I really had to put the pause button, reflect.
Such a common story, right?
Such a common story.
We hear it every day.
And I guess this is human nature, right?
Yeah.
It's only when you really hit rock bottom or when you really hit a wall.
If you don't do it, your body makes you, right?
Correct, you're forced to.
Yeah.
So I guess that was my forcing point or turning point at the time. I had to stop. I had an 18-month baby at the time. Tamara's now almost 12.
Right.
She was so young, dependent on me, and I couldn't get out of bed. I knocked so many different doors, went where I thought was the way we should, direct ourselves to the Western medicine. And in a nutshell, it failed me. I couldn't get the answers. I had no diagnosis.
Another common theme, right?
Another very common theme. My file had undiagnosed for 3 years. Nobody knew what was wrong. My complete blood work was book perfect. My hormonal spectrum, my blood work would come back absolutely spot on. And they basically told me it's all in my head. That was maybe psychological when I obviously knew that something was wrong postpartum, that they couldn't dictate or they couldn't really indicate where the source was. And that's when I had to sort of mentally challenge myself to leave a job I loved so much, a passion at the time, my corporate job that was also highly paid at the time. And I wanted to be obviously financially independent and stable. And I thought this was, like I said, what I'm supposed to be doing for many years to come. and to focus on my health, to reflect back, and to just be the mother I needed to be for my child at the time.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. So what got you started with, which one was first, by the way? Was it the Roost, was it Catcha Matcha, or the Broth Lab?
So the Roost is 2017, so it was the first.
Almost 10 years now.
It was almost 10 years
Amazing,
ago.
wow.
And the amount of people that told me you're crazy to be opening a healthy rotisserie or a healthy eatery in a place like Dubai.
Yeah.
Oh my God, if I had a dirham every time someone told me that, I'd be a billionaire. But I knew what I was doing, and I knew not just the market needed something that's fast and clean and healthy. I knew the future was health. I witnessed it firsthand, but I also understood that, you know, not necessarily that when you penetrate the market early on, once you have these hurdles, it was obvious. But I was skeptical. But I think 3 years, 4 years in, after COVID hit, it was sort of a testament, you know, this is it. The whole world has stopped for health.
Yeah.
And that's when we launched the Broth Lab later on, 2020.
Yeah.
And then 2 years ago, Catcha Matcha from Oji Kyoto, the premium AAA matcha.
Amazing, amazing. You know, there's a common saying in Harvard that they would say is that never be first, always be second, because this is what happens in businesses in general, you know, so it's the hardest thing to do is to be first to market.
Correct.
And generally is the second that really takes off, and, you know, obviously there are exceptions, but as a general strategy, this is something that, you know, very common. Never be first, always be second. That
was my worry in the beginning. Am I too early penetrating the market? Are they really right? I was skeptical in that sense. But look at the Roost now, 10 years later.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for people that are going, you know, wanting to enter this space of wellness or well-being in general? Because I think you've been through so much. And what I love about what you do is that you're incredibly generous with your time. You help people that are new onto this, people that are individuals that are trying to get, be it naturopath or otherwise. You're always finding time and space to provide a platform for these individuals. How do you do it? And what advice would you give people that are entering into the space?
You know, I was in their shoe once upon a time at the time, and nobody really had time for me. And if only in those early years have I had a bit of guidance or just hope. Because what is a human being without hope, right? Hope that you're in the right track, hope that you're doing something that will be hopefully impactful, have a ripple effect. And I know how it feels when new businesses or new entrepreneurs are on this journey and they're alone. And I know how it feels to be busy and distracted. But the whole ethos of why I built what I built to educate others, right? I didn't want to open a rotisserie because I'm just obsessed with chicken, you know? I knew there was a need, a huge need to educate people the importance of having hormone-free, antibiotic-free, the ill effect that comes with that on our health, especially on the young ones. And the same applied for the Broth Lab and so on. So if that wasn't all along my vision, then what's the point of not being there and guiding all those who strive to do the same? Because we are the collective. We are not one. If we are one, it's definitely going to fail. And that's how I feel. I feel empowering others to keep that message on really gives back to me as well.
This is one of the many things that you and I share, you know, not following hypes, etc., but we also share that the only way that you could truly be healthy is that you need to help everyone else be healthy.
Correct.
Be it from a career perspective, be it from a personal health perspective, mental health, and so on and so forth. So we tend to think of us as an island, and over and over again, we're reminded by nature, by you know, be it spirituality or just common relationships, that we are definitely are not. If one person is ill, we're all ill. And therefore, that generosity, I think, is spot on. And the way you approach how you do things, the way that, you know, you don't follow particular trends, you just focus on the basics because, and I'd like to focus a little bit on you because there's so much to learn from you when it comes to gut health. This is the basis of everything, right? When it comes to your gut. And then you've created Broth Lab for that specific reason, because it's not just about immunity, it's not just about mental health, it has so many other benefits also across the spectrum of our health. So I think you were one of the, unless people are living under a rock, they've heard of bone broth, the Broth Lab. Everyone knows, and everyone is now including bone broth of some type into their diet, which is amazing. I love hearing that. So what got you into bone broth in general and creating Broth Lab?
So I particularly chose my degree because it's a research-backed university. I am really all about having, backed by science studies. I'm not a big fan of Googling, or maybe at the time it was Google, now it's ChatGPT. I'm not a big fan of generalizing data or trying to get the bottom line of things. I really like thoroughly to understand why something is what it is and why it has a profound benefit on your health. Whatever it is, even if it's salt, I like to get to the nitty-gritty of why, adding quality salt maybe could add. And that's where I enrolled myself in a nutrition institute. And 3 years later, I wanted to specialize more in the microbiome, gut health, because those were, I felt, one of the neglected symptoms that many of the doctors have disregarded as normal. Probably it was common, but not necessarily normal, especially for my case and many others. Many other women postpartum particularly. So I wanted to study the science behind. I wanted to understand the controlled group that went through certain trials. And not necessarily is food usually tested, right? They're not really sponsored by the big pharma. So you don't see a lot of it. But from the very little that I studied in the nutrition school, I realized the profound benefit and how food is truly medicinal. It's the foundation.
Of everything.
Of every single thing. And as we know that, it's a fact, it's basic knowledge, but it's ignored. It's just taken for granted.
It's forgotten,
It's forgotten, it's taken for granted. So when all the functional wellness, the different doctors, even those in Western school, different school of thoughts, were pointing towards the healing power of bone broth, I was like, hold on a second. My ancestors, probably your ancestor, everyone's ancestors, regardless of the 100%. Culture, their demographics, used to incorporate bone broth at one point as a staple in their kitchen, a staple in their cooking. It's always in their freezers, their fridges.
Lim-adim, right? Lim-adim.
Yes, exactly.
You make the basically the hoofs of sheep, right?
Correct.
They would boil them, and I had just a quick thing. So my dad fell in like 3 stories and he broke his back.
Sorry to hear that.
And the number one thing that they gave him at the time was that.
Correct.
Was lim-adim. Or bone broth.
Correct.
And to actually eat the gelatin that came off the legs, And he was up and running again in like 2 or 3 months because of that.
It's the only bioavailable collagen that you could extract for your bones. And again, it is the source, it's the OG. When we talk about all these different minerals, amino acids, and collagen, this is where it's derived from. And it's the only thing our body recognizes as bioavailable. And that's why your father had the healing effect from consuming it. So after all the research-backed articles were pointing towards the healing power of bone broth, I was like, okay, you know what? That ancestral superfood is not a coincidence. So I started incorporating, as the guinea pig that I am, I started incorporating it. Instead of the protein powders, I started incorporating more bone broth in my smoothies. I replaced my morning coffee and I had bone broth on an empty stomach after that fasting period. I would do occasional intermittent fasting. I would break my fast with bone broth. I would have it in all my stews, all my soups. I will have it in literally everything that I would cook, even in my grains. After soaking them, I would cook them in bone broth. And slowly, I was getting my energy back. My adrenal fatigues were ignite. The bloat that was common was no longer there. All the different symptoms slowly and gradually starting going away. My immunity was boosting, my minerals, I could tell my hair was growing back. I was feeling better, I was looking better. So I understood that nobody needs to tell me if this thing is legit or not. I have the answers, I'm feeling it. And even if it's a coincidence, let it be. I'm happy where I'm going, I'm out of bed, I'm energized. I can think without that brain fog. I can think with clarity. I didn't have that for a while, I would forget things, I was so forgetful. And I understand antioxidants were key, and I would add all the blueberries you could imagine, a bucket a day, but it wasn't really getting me there. And slowly, I felt the impact of how bone broth was healing to me And obviously I passed it to my loved one, passed it to my family. As my family grew and I had my second child, it was a whole different ball game of how I also weaned her and then incorporated foods and incorporated family. And it's funny because sometimes I can tell from my both kids how I was with my first and how I was my second. Yeah. And I sometimes say, oh, I should have done this with my first, but I didn't have the knowledge,
Every parent has
yes.
that, right? Yeah, I know. It's a process that everyone goes through.
It is.
There are 2 points that you mentioned that I think resonate the most with me. And one is that I always say that we live in the world's best wearable.
Yes.
Everyone goes to the rings, to the Whoop, to the Apple Watches, to whatever, right?
Yeah.
But this is like your best wearable.
100%.
Like it gives you the feedback that you really need.
Best
you just
indicator.
need to tune in, right?
Yeah.
You just need to tune in. And the fact that that you realized that it's going to take time, because that's the reframing that it still hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm finding continuously, what I'm trying to talk about very regularly, is that we're approaching this new revolution of wellness, of well-being, with the same frame of mind that we had with traditional medicine. So our expectations of how we get better and what the process is like is still going through the lens of that old thought.
Correct.
Of how we get better, So, but it takes time. When I say to someone, you should get on bone broth, they say, well, I tried it a few times,
Nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't understand that it's a concept. It's something that you need to build upon. Your body it takes time. It took time to get you to where you are right now, in the shape that you are right now. It's going to take time to bounce you back, know? So these two are really important, listening to our body and then being patient with the process and understanding and shifting or reframing your thought process to understand what wellness truly means.
Yeah.
It is a lifestyle. Every aspect of what you do contributes either positively or negatively to your health.
Yes.
We are the total sum of our choices.
Correct.
Right? So, and sometimes people are surprised with that fact. They say, well, I don't know why I feel so bad. Well, if you truly examine why you feel so bad, it's because mostly perhaps you're not aware of your environment. You're not aware of what's messing with you, be it mold, be it the food that you ate, is it the late nights, is it the drinking, is it the smoking, is it this, is it that, all of these different things, and then it should not come as a surprise. Now obviously biology is a lot more complicated than that, but I think it would be a fair generalization to say making the right choices get you to the right place.
100%.
And it's not like anyone is particularly infallible and you're not going to make the occasional cheat meal or do this or that. It's not about being perfect. The body can take a lot, but as long as you understand what heals it and approach it in that way and use it as a wearable for you to understand what's happening within your body, and then the extra stuff, all the fluff that you hear about, all the hype, it's maybe 10-20% of your wellness journey.
Correct.
But it's all about the basics.
All about the basics, going back to those simple habits, everyday habits. Do you hear someone saying, oh, my vitamin D was low, so I went once in the sun?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Right.
It's a regular thing that you have to have that exposure, right? To be able to synthesize and have vitamin D to the levels that your body needs it to sustain. So it's similar with food. You don't say, oh, I had bone broth the day before yesterday and I didn't see anything today, or I had it. It's an everyday consistency, And health is not linear. I think we are obsessed with what health is supposed to look like.
Yeah.
We put it in a box. And then we look from the outside and say, this is how it looks. This is how it has to feel. But no, it's not that. And again, something that I live by is that health is not the absence of disease. Like you said exactly, our body goes through so much. But health is really living life optimally regardless of disease, right? This is really our ultimate aim. But it's on point what you said, the quick fixes, depending on wearables, all that data we're collecting. What are we doing with the data? If you think about it, okay, my recovery was not optimum today. Yesterday it was perfect, it was 92. And I was thinking, oh my God, this is great, I want to maintain it. But today it wasn't optimum, it was 67, for example. What do I do with this data? I need to tune into my body and understand that my sleep wasn't as optimum as I want it to be, and that happens. This is life. Health is not perfection. It's about tuning in, trying to lower my cortisol, trying to not take too much, trying to understand and be wary that how I'm feeling today could be contributing to how I slept, and understanding and being more intuitive with my eating, really does help. And, tucking myself earlier. Maybe.
We're also talking about learning how to say no more.
And exactly, saying I wouldn't say no to being here, for example, but I would say no to being elsewhere.
I'm glad.
After.
I'm so happy that you're here.
But my point is that it's an everyday intuitive contribution and action based on whether we have the wearables. But like you said, at the end of the day, I still feel great today. Will I still connect it to what the data told me, disregarding what I actually feel? I still feel great, and I can still go for it. So I think it's so important to understand that balance.
Yeah, we depend again a lot on what we see on our phone and online and things like that. And my advice to people is normally look at the trend rather than day per day. So I look at larger figures. And even the ring, I take it in, I take it off, I put it on. I take it off, I don't always have it on. Same with like CGM. I would use CGM twice a year, for example, just to kind of see what's happening. I never obsess over numbers because I know that my body is walking on a very thin line. And it goes this way sometimes and that way sometimes. And I begin to adjust so I have a little bit less of left and right and more in the center by understanding how much actual sleep do I need. What changes is my body going through? What is happening with my mental health? Where are the stress sources? Where are they coming from? Are they manageable? Can they move? Can I move away from them? Can I make these adjustments? And you and I, every time we meet, we always click on these things, on the simplest of things. And then the other thing that we also connect on is that we're very much about this region. And I want to kind of like touch on that as we wrap up. So I'm making it my mission, and I shout it off rooftops, is that we are for here. We should not be importing, be it our brands or our knowledge, because if you're not from here, you're just not going to understand what it is. And I'm not speaking only about people that are born here. I'm also talking about people that have moved here, because within weeks, your microbiome adapts. Your microbiome becomes local.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So you cannot continue to import that information. And we have such amazing people around us that are capable. Everyone is so incredible at gathering information. And now, obviously, there are always the plus and minuses and everything, right? And the hypes and this and that. But if you tune out the same way that you tune out that information that comes from the West and take and focus on what is local, be it on local businesses, local entrepreneurs, or local knowledge, you're likely to benefit a lot more. So I'd love your perspective, because we haven't really had the time to discuss your view of this part of the world becoming the center of wellness of anywhere. I truly believe that, So everyone is looking at this region. Everyone wants to come here. Every brand wants to, set up here. Every single brand that I work with have reached out to me. This is what I want to do. How do we enter this region? How do I come in and say, it is the center of the world when it comes to wellness and well-being, or at least it's on its way to become that. So I'd love to hear your view on people living here and the uniqueness that we have here, be it our spices, be it our recipes, be it our life, our family life, our culture, the way we interact with each other. And obviously with geography, be it the heat, the dust, the sun, etc. What is your view on how the wellness situation is in this part of the world?
I love that you're asking that, because even though I'm an expat, I'm not really an expat. I'm born and raised here. My family is raised here. My husband is born and raised here. My father and my mother came here in the late 60s. So, and I joke a lot with my mother. My father has passed away, but I'm sure, my mother would always say, if your father was still alive, he would be saying, look at you, look at the transformation. You're spoiled to the bone, because when we came here, we used to follow a track to the airport when we would fly out,
Yeah.
rocks.
Yeah.
There was no infrastructure. There wasn't
Yeah.
even a pathway, a street that would take us to the airport, and we
Yeah.
had to follow dusty signs and things like that. And you would say, what are you complaining about?
Yeah.
Like, you have it easy now, the 80s and the 90s, and look at you now. But a big part of my mom, when she looks back, she loved it back then because it was simpler.
Yeah.
But also because coming in from the Levant region, it wasn't an easy transition. But once they understood and they were part of the aesthetic and part of the DNA of the region, it was home. They couldn't go back.
Yeah.
They would actually, when they go back home, they'd get ill,
Yes.
or they would
Yes,
they would
yes,
they would
yes.
really need to adjust after a while.
Yeah.
So I've seen the transformation. As much as we've blessed, seeing over the decades how the UAE have evolved in healthcare, I do see what you're saying. We need to filter out a lot of the hypes, a lot of the expert talks, a lot of the advisory in sense of what worked for an English white guy versus, a Mediterranean born in the UAE, desert girl, Palestinian like myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where, when we talk about bio-individuality, that's exactly what it is.
Right.
What the advice that you could give me could necessarily have worked within your region, within your DNA composition. It could have worked over research-backed science,
Yes.
like, I'm a big advocate of, but not necessarily has taken other factors
Yeah.
into play. So looking at the wide spectrum of how things are really effective from one person to the other is taking in, the culture, the region. We talk about, inflammation, for example. The Mediterranean diet is the ultimate anti-inflammatory
Exactly, right.
diet, and it's from our region. And what better people to vouch for it or not based on our,
Or educate on it.
Exactly.
I would get someone from the US saying,
How?
80% of Americans do it,
Exactly.
and I'm thinking,
but how? You know what I mean? There's
Exactly.
we're negating ourselves all the time. There's a big contradiction. And it's not like we're opposing other experts in their field having an opinion, but it's just not one size fits all. And we can't sort of idealize a name from a certain region and try to replicate it. Being in the corporate world, especially when I was part of the regulator for a monopoly, we used to apply a lot of best practices, especially from Singapore and Commonwealth countries.
Right.
And that was the worst thing that we did for the sector.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a mission. I traveled for 1 year. I lived in Singapore, and I had to come back with all the best practices, all the replicas. And they were not very happy with me because I told them 40% of what I'm laying down are best practices there that won't work for our sector.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, what do you mean? Like, we've invested all that
Yeah.
time, all that effort, all that, into, having you back up. And I was like, no, that's not going to work here.
Yeah.
You're doomed to fail, And they were like, okay, so what do we need to do? I was like, we need to really understand the best that have worked there, the whys. The why is so important.
Yeah.
Why is how it works there before we apply blindly here. But back, 2 decades ago, almost, that worked. Applying best practices for a region that's still booming, that has great ambitions, that have a lot of feasibility, financially viable and able to apply, test, work, not work,
Right.
Not every nation has that ability, and we're blessed to have that power, but it comes with a price.
Yeah.
So I do recall back in the days when, plugging, playing best practices or things that worked abroad not necessarily works for us as a region.
And it comes also, I feel sometimes, it stems from where we lack the confidence, as if our information is not good enough, or
Yeah.
anything as important must be better than ours. I don't know why we have that sort of lack of confidence about what we're capable of doing. And we've been proven over and over again that there are awesome people that do awesome things and relevant to us. And not to mention that perhaps the main thing that most of that information misses
Yeah.
is how we, what is our family life like? So we know now that family life, the way our culture is, the way we connect, even with our elders,
Yeah.
the way our kids don't leave home the moment they're 17 or 18 years of age, that family way of living is contributing to our health and mental health and so many others, where other cultures don't have
For
that.
sure.
So and they fail to see this. So we have so many things that are going for us.
Yes.
I know you and I can talk forever, and I hope we could get this conversation going some other time. And I know you have tons of things happening this week and every week. I am really grateful that you're here today,
Thank you.
and it's always a pleasure to have a chat with you. Good
I
luck
learned
with
so much
everything.
from you, Elie, honestly. I'm here learning always.
You are
whenever we
too
have.
kind. I feel the same. I
But
feel
thank
the
you so
same.
much for having me.
Thank
It's
you.
such a pleasure
Thank you.
being here.
Well, you guys, you've heard it here. Please check out Hadil's products and brands. They are incredible. They are part of what I do usually. Thank you again for listening, and see you next time.